Hey everyone, it's Charlie Morgan and welcome to another video. So I thought I would record today's quick video from my car because I was just driving back home and had this little thought that popped to mind, and I thought I would record a video to explore. So what I want to do today is cover three things, the main three things. Now, you've probably watched a lot of videos before saying, oh, this is the one thing you need to be successful. Do these three things and everything will be easy. And you watch the video and then nothing's actually any easier. But today I want to sort of break down three things. And I think that after a lot of critical thought, these are the three main things that you need to succeed. And it's not a piece of email copy. It's not a little sales script. It's an understanding of three fundamental things, right? And if you understand these and you actually think, okay, these are the three things that I need, and therefore I'm going to chase these three things and do them, or leverage them, you'll be very successful. So in systems theory, there is a, well, not in systems theory, but in science, there's, well, okay, let me rephrase that. When you think about mental disciplines, there's a mental discipline or a model called reductionism, right? And reductionism is basically the antithesis to systems theory. And what it states is that as opposed to things emerging as a result of variables connecting, which is what systems theory is all about, and emergence theory and holism and stuff like that, reductionism is actually something that underpins the entire of modern science, right? Reductionism is when we take complicated things, systems or situations or context, and we boil them down to their core constituent parts. And this is really what science is all about, right? And this is what Newton gave birth to in terms of reductionism, and sort of looking at big things and sort of bringing them all the way down to their core. So a primary example of this is life, and bringing it all the way down to DNA, and then bringing it below DNA to atoms and molecules and electrons and all these tiny things. But that's sort of like an interesting thing to look at from a scientific perspective. But you can actually apply reductionism and the theory of it and the way it works to your life and business and the outcome that you want to achieve. Okay, so what I want to do here is, obviously this channel is predominantly for agency owners, but what I'm about to tell you can apply to pretty much anything in life. Any outcome you want, any situation or future you desire for yourself is achieved by these three things. And these are the three things. So if we apply reductionism and we think about your life and what you want, you can actually reduce it down to just three things, which is what I've done today. So the opposite of reductionism is holism, however you want to pronounce that. And that states that, like, it's not about like reducing everything down, but it's actually about looking at the interconnections between all variables across multiple different systems. But you can't really apply that to this. So reductionism is useful, and I wanted to sort of give some context as to how I've approached today's topic. So what are the three things? Well, the three things are, well, before you can actually understand the three things, you have to understand what you want. Okay, and understand, it's almost like four things, but it's not. But the fourth thing, that's three, that's four. The fourth thing would be actually knowing what you want and the future you want to have. This is the most important thing to begin with, because it doesn't matter what action you take or what knowledge you gain or anything like that. If you don't know what you want and you don't know where you're headed and you don't understand what trajectory you need to put yourself on to actually achieve something, then you're not achieving anything. It's just wild. It's like, we use the example of getting on a plane with no plane ticket, and then you end up in Africa or, I don't know, somewhere random, and you're like, oh, I didn't want to be somewhere random. And then you're like, well, that's your fault for not buying a plane ticket or thinking about where you want to go. So that's the first thing, is like, if you're watching this and you're like, oh, I just need three things to be successful, you need a goal, right? You need to have a snapshot of the future. You need to be able to project into your thoughts where you want to be and what you want the future to look like. Because if you don't do that, then everything's chaotic and you have nothing, you have no real, like, there's no real incentive to work. Everything's chaos basically ensues when you don't have a goal or something to chase. So that's rule number one. Before you even think about the main things you need to do to be successful or have what you want, you think about what you actually want. Because a lot of people don't know that. Because a lot of people aren't, well, they don't know themselves. And to know what you want, you have to know yourself. And if you don't know yourself, then you're clearly not paying attention to your thoughts or your belief systems. And the reason we do that is because it's usually quite painful and difficult to do. But story for another day. But for now, I'm assuming if you're watching this video, you know roughly what you want. Obviously, concisely is better than roughly. But if you have a brief understanding of where you want to be, like 10K a month, 100K a month, $1 million a month, whatever that might be, then it's a good place to start. And financial goals are a very good way of solidifying a future for ourselves, because they actually give us a tangible, measurable KPI or metric that we can use to track our success against that. So if your goal is 10k a month and you're making, you know, when you start you're making 0, and 3 months in you're making 2k a month, you can think, oh, I'm actually 20% towards that goal, and that progress is very, very motivating and self-fulfilling, and the feedback from that is very significant. But the 3 things, so I'm assuming you know what you want. Here are the 3 things. Okay, it's too early on a Sunday morning for this. So 3 things. The first one is knowledge, right? The second one is an understanding of how time works. And the third one is mindset or character, right? I'm going to break down these 3. So we've got knowledge, we've got time, we've got character. So knowledge. So knowledge, like by knowledge, I'm not saying like you need to read hundreds if not thousands of books and spend hours listening to podcasts. You just need to know a specific thing about a specific thing, right? And by knowledge, I'm actually reducing this to knowledge, but it's obviously a very broad like statement. Oh, you just need to know things. It seems quite obvious, but it's knowledge of cause and effect. Now, knowledge of cause and effect in terms of how cause and effect works, and understanding how the universe plays itself out through cause and effect. Everything that happens has a cause, which is caused by a cause. But understanding how cause and effect works is the most important thing. But once you understand how cause and effect works, it's knowledge of the fact that your goal is an effect. The thing that you want, the thing that I talked about 2 minutes ago, about that sort of outcome that you desire, that is an effect in the future. It's a snapshot of the future. It's up here and you're here, right? And so what you need to do is you need to have the knowledge of what causes that effect, right? So if you want to create a future for yourself, you realize it's an effect, and you realize that everything in the universe is cause and effect. And so you need to figure out what causes the effect that I want. What are the, I mean, it's usually way more than one cause, right? For a start, there's a lot of things that you need to understand. But let's say that your goal is to get to 100k a month in your business, right? Well, that's an effect, right? It's a byproduct of actions that we take and that we put out into the world. And like, if you're not where you want to be, it's just because that the causes that you're acting on aren't the causes that create the effects you want. And your view of reality or the paradigm that you're currently operating out of is probably quite foggy. And that's just a lack of knowledge. And that's what happens when you're a beginner. Second one is time, and we'll talk about how time works in a second. But for now, knowledge, right? So understanding the cause and effect relationship between your current actions and the goal you want to achieve. And also understanding that if you do take an action that is not conducive towards the goal that you want, then you're actually moving away from that goal. So every time we think that like we have these good actions, and every time we take a step forward, then we take a step forward. But if you're working and you're doing good work, and then when you're not working, you're doing terrible things that completely sabotage your goal, you might take a step or 2 forward when you're working, but then you take 10 steps backwards in your downtime, or, you know, when you're not working. And I'm not saying you have to work all the time, but I'm saying that there's like activities that are the antithesis of your goal. And if you do those, then you're actually moving way away from your goal, even though you might sabotage yourself or justify those poor actions against the good ones because you think you're making progress, when in reality you're actually making a little bit of progress. But the only reason you're making a little bit of progress is because you're taking so many steps backwards when you're not working or doing things that you should do. Prime example of this is, let's say you have a day at work where you make 100 cold calls, you book 2 meetings, and you sign a client, right? That's great progress towards your goal. But then after you finish working, you go out and you party until 5 a.m. and you have half a bottle of vodka, and then the days after that tend to not be great. And so you've made some progress in the day, but then you've basically reversed all of that progress, or you probably, the overall sort of like, the overall progress is net positive, but it's very, very like small in comparison to what it could be if you didn't do the stupid action after you did the good one. So that's the first thing, is cause and effect. And so like, if you want to build a successful agency, you need to have cause and effect in terms of knowledge about like how to book meetings, how to close sales, how to handle objections, how to onboard clients, how to deliver results, how to manage clients, how to get paid. All of these things, like all these little systems you need to build, are basically things that, like, vehicles of knowledge that you need to understand. And that's why people buy our program, Imperium Agency program, so they can gain knowledge about the things that they're lacking, so they can actually fill these knowledge gaps, because it's very difficult to come up with these things on your own, because how could you come up with them on your own if you have no idea how they work or what they do? And you can with lots and lots of thought, but it's usually easier to do the opposite. So that's rule number 1, or thing number 1, or guru statement here, number 1, is just having the knowledge of A, how cause and effect works, and then B, how what causes create the effect you want. And if you know that, then there's a lot of order to this as opposed to chaos, because then you understand exactly what needs to be done for you to achieve your goal and your desire. Number one. Number two, so number two was time, but I'm going to make number three time, and number two is character. Okay, so your character is basically your mindset, it's your paradigm, it's your belief system, it's the way that you go through the world, right? It's your skill set, it's your character traits, it's your habits, it's what goes on up here. Now, there's no point in having a really good understanding of what you need to do to achieve your goal if you haven't got the character to do it. And this is a really painful thing. This is the main, these two things, knowledge and character, are the two things that probably hold you back from everything that you want. Because you might know what you need to do, but you just might not do it because you haven't got the motivation to, or the willpower, or the discipline, right? And this is a really common problem for entrepreneurs, is they go ahead and they buy some courses, and then they get some knowledge, and then they get some results, they get a couple of meetings, or they get a little bit closer to their goal. But then there's something about it that just like completely brings them back, and that something is a lack of character, and it's poor mindset. And it's not, I don't mean poor in the terms of the word of wealth, but I mean poor in terms of the inability to see things through, be consistent, and finish things. And it's devastating, right? Now you might be wondering, like, why does that happen, right? If I know I want something and I know it's going to be great for me and I've got the knowledge to do it, why the hell can't I do it? And the predominant underpinning theory from Jung and Freud and other famous psychologists from the 20th century is the idea that you have another side to yourself that's subconsciously setting goals way below what you want to achieve. So you've got who you currently are, right? And who you currently are desires to be more than what it currently is, which is obviously where the goals manifest themselves from. And these bubble up from our subconscious, and we don't quite understand why we want them, but we know that we do. And we want them because the human condition is that we want more for ourselves. But at the same time, there's an element here of Stockholm syndrome, which is basically where, like, you might not like something, but just because you're so familiar with it, you keep doing it. Right, it's just stubbornness, basically. And your sense of self is very stubborn. Who you currently are your brain wants to stay where you currently are, because although you're in pain, it knows that you're not dying, and it knows that you're not in significant danger, and your survival isn't that limited. It might be, but if it is, you'll be way more motivated. So you set this goal, and you need the character, you need the knowledge to understand the cause and effect, the relationships that create the goal, but you need to have the character to overcome the current self that you have to actually go and get it, okay? And if you're not going to get it, then it's because who you currently are is stronger than who you want to become. And so that sort of battle, when you look at, like, when you watch films and, like, someone's got, like, a decision to make between two things, and they've got an angel on one shoulder in one ear and a devil in another ear, and the devil's saying don't do the good thing and the angel's saying do the good thing. And this is what happens to every entrepreneur whenever they make a decision to take action towards their goal, is they've got angel and devil. And the entrepreneur, all you have to do is listen to the angel, right? And I don't mean that in a religious sense at all. I just mean that you know what the right thing to do is, but there's one part of you that makes it very difficult to do that. And so overcoming that part and becoming conscious of it is the main thing. There's a great quote from Carl Jung, that says, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will rule your life and you will call it fate. And so this devil that sits on your shoulder that tells you to do the wrong things is your unconscious mind. It's your previous sense of self. It's the Stockholm syndrome to the situation that you loathe but actually are quite comfortable in that creates this issue and problem. And until you become consciously aware of it and realize that it doesn't serve you and it does these nasty things to you subconsciously, you will never understand why you're not going to strive for your goal. That's the second thing. And I get emotional talking about that because this shit is really, really fucking important, and it's things that should be taught in school, and it's things that we should receive educations on. But I had to dive into fucking 20th century psychology, psychoanalysis textbooks to understand this stuff, and being able to share it with you and liberate you from the negative shadow, the sense of self that drags you down is meaningful. And that's the second thing. So it's not like I say. The second thing is character and who you are, your mindset. But it's not necessarily about building a really amazing character. It's just about killing the one that is it just holds you back. And it's breathing down your neck, just reminding you that it's there. And getting rid of that is the second most important thing. Because your goal like requires you to become a different person. If you were the person that could achieve your goal, you would have already achieved it, right? Think about that for a second. You want 100k a month? No, you don't want to. You don't want to strive for 100k a month. You want to strive to become the person capable of achieving 100k a month. And we achieve these objectives and goals through psychological inversion and recognizing that it's us that produces everything in our life. And so if we want more things in our life, we just have to become the person capable of achieving that and of producing them. And the goal will follow, right? The effect will follow. This is the ultimate form of cause and effect. It's understanding that you cause everything. And if you want an effect, it's you, and you have to become the person, right? So we achieve goals through self-development. And money tends to be a yardstick of measurement against personal progress, which is a cool thing to understand. So that's number 2. So the first one, where am I? Knowledge, character, and then we've got time. So time's the biggest one, the one that I've struggled with the most, because time's a really, really strange thing to understand. And I don't mean time like checking your wrist and looking at what the time is. I mean understanding like how second order consequences work, how event horizons work, and recognizing that things take time to come to fruition. So if you've got all the knowledge you need and you're building the character that you need to become to apply that knowledge and take action every day and take responsibility for your situation, the only thing that you need now is time. And to recognize that once you have those two things, you must give them enough time to produce the result that you want. Things don't happen overnight. And we know this. We know that instant gratification is bad for us. And we know that patience is a virtue. And all of these cliches are cliches for a reason, because they resonate deeply with us because they ripple the truth, right? And they make sense. But understanding that time is important is, like, it seems obvious and it seems quite clear, but like you might understand it, but until you actually live through it and see the entire paradigm through time and understanding that everything takes time, then you'll be in trouble. Because you might find that you acquire the knowledge and you start becoming a different person, and after 3 months you're still not making much progress, right? And that's normal, and that's a natural time frame to not see progress on. It's a short period of time in the scheme of things. You know, you want to build a 100k a month business, or you want 10k a month, right? You want to be in the top, I don't know, 10 to 5% of earners in your country, and you want that and you expect that in like a month. When the flip side, or the other way of achieving that goal, is to go through 7 years of school, get 300 grand in debt, and then work a job that you don't really like. Now, I'm not going against anyone who does that, because they might love it, but that would be my perspective. So you've got to realize, like, if you want to make a 6-figure or multi-6 or 7-figure income, it's going to take years. It's going to take 3 to 4 to 5 years of constant character development, constant knowledge acquisition, and constant application of the knowledge and the character to get what you want. And if you get 6 months down the line and you're still not where you want to be, then that's fine. Right? It's realizing when you set goals that you give yourself enough time. Now, when I set a goal for myself or for my companies, I don't even give them a time anymore, because time, I'm in no position to tell time what it should do. Time should unfold itself. You can't control it. You can't grab it and influence it and shape it and mold it and bend it to your will. If you could do that, you'd be a fucking superhero, right? And you'd own the entire universe. But time, you have to just let it do its thing. Every day you wake up and do everything that can be done, and you try to behave with the most integrity you can, conducive to who you want to become. And you try to acquire as much knowledge as you can, conducive to the goal that you want to have. And you do that with as much intensity, with as much vigor and passion as you can every day, for as long as you can, with as much focus as possible. And then you just do that, and you understand, and you relax, because you know that time will reward you for doing those things. But if you say, I want it in 3 months, or I want it in 6 months, it's not how time works. Because it doesn't, we're very optimistic about time frames. People aren't optimistic about how much they can make or how much they can do. They're optimistic about how quickly they can do it, right? Anyone can make 10 million a month, I believe. But the only thing is, not anyone can do it in 3 months. It takes like fucking 30 years to do that. Maybe not 30 years. That might be too long, depending on how much action you take and what you come into contact with and how lucky you get. So those are the things, right? Is knowledge, character, and time. And like understanding that if you have those first two things and you give the third thing the autonomy and liberty it needs to operate without you trying to control it or get emotional about it, then you'll win. It's as simple as that. I've thought about this a lot, and I've used that reductionism principle to really try and boil this down. And I can't see much beyond that. Now, I could be blind. There could be a lot more of things that you need. But when I observe, like when I look back over the small amount of success I've had in my life, in terms of scaling an agency to, over 350 clients, and having a coaching business that signed 100 clients in the last 10 months, high ticket, $5,000 clients, like that's in the scheme of it, in the scheme of everything business wise, it's tiny. It's a drop in the ocean. It's very insignificant, right? When you look at the behemoths in business. But when I look at that and I think, how have I done that? Like, how have I made this money, and how have I developed as an entrepreneur? I think these are the things. And the cool thing about this is that the time thing is still playing everything out, and I'm still learning new things all the time, and I'm still working on my character all the time. And so you've got to recognize that goals are dynamic and flexible, and satisfaction is non-existent, right? When you hit something, it's a very short period of time. Oh yeah, I got this amazing thing. And then it goes, and then you're like, what's next? And that's the human condition. And if you accept that and you work with it as opposed to against it, things will line up for you and you'll be very successful. So that's everything from me. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you found it useful, press the like button because it helps me help you. Also comment if you disagree, or if you have something to add to this video. It'd be interesting to know. Subscribe, okay? Do not turn your notifications on. Like, hit that little bell icon. I wouldn't do that because it will just distract you from getting knowledge, building the character, right? Those are the two things that you should focus on, not random YouTube notifications. So turn all your notifications off. I mean, just get rid of all the stuff, and then check back every now and then. So a couple of things. In the description, there are two things for you. Thing number one is a link to a funnel that will explain what we do and how we help agency owners systemize their life, systemize their business, and get more clients. There's no obligation for you to click that. I do not produce these videos to funnel you through and make loads of money. It's actually with better interest than that, which is quite nice to know. But I actually recognize that our product is fucking amazing, and it's within my best interest and yours to introduce it to you. So go ahead and watch that. It's not a bullshit VSL case study. I'm not going to ask for your email or try and give you a free ebook. Just have a look, check out the testimonials, and if you want to book a call, you can. Second thing is we have a Facebook community, right, called the Imperium Agency Club. It may be, the name may be subject to change, but in the link, there'll be a link below that to join that community. The purpose of that community, for full transparency, is to sell you things. I'm not going to bullshit you or pretend that I'm not, but our strategy for selling you things is to provide you with so much free value and content that it only makes logical sense for you to actually pursue our paid stuff. You don't have to, it's no obligation. You can sit in that group and reap the dividends of all of the content we give you and the free strategies we provide in there. But in the long term, if I give you enough, you might give me something back, and that could be a good reciprocal thing for both of us. So that's everything for me, or from me, for today's video. That's everything for you from today's video. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I will see you in the next one. Talk soon.